that caught my attention. This one I noticed and I thought it was just a temporary thing, but this is apparently it. Google Cache. I used to use it a lot. A very handy thing because often pages are down and I'd look at the cached version. But Google has decided to knock it off. They're no longer going to make them. So that's useful to know. There's the Internet Archive, but it doesn't back up everything. It didn't back up as much as Google. Anyway, so Elon Musk just got punished in a very unusual way. I heard Scott Galloway on a podcast say he's never seen this, and he's very experienced in business. The board of directors assigned him a bunch of stock as compensation, and that price grew to $55 billion. And they decided in retrospect that they paid him too much money, which is an unprecedented new thing to do. And it'll be interesting to see if other companies imitate this. And it all started because of one heavy metal drummer who didn't like Elon having all that money, and he sued, and he only had 10 shares of stock in Tesla. So he had a trivial holding in Tesla, and this seems like a strange weakness in the system. It reminds me of my CISSP. I got a CISSP certification. Before that, I had Associate of ISC Squared, and one sort of insane, angry guy protested to try to revoke my certification. And the rules are anybody can protest that you have been immoral at any time. They don't have to be a client or have any relationship with you. And you have to respond within 30 days or you lose your certification. So I responded, and I didn't lose my certification. But this seems like a similar weakness in the system. It seems to me like nobody should be allowed to protest the CEO's pay unless they are a substantial investor or something. But anyway, this is apparently the structure of his corporation. There is, by the way, another structure which Mark Zuckerberg made famous, where you make a dual shareholder class corporation. You can make it so that the founder can never be fired. But Elon Musk did not do that. Mark Zuckerberg did do that. Anyway, it's a curious arrangement. And this, Elon Musk was complaining about this. I saw him complaining about it on Twitter, or news articles about Twitter about 6 months ago, and I must agree. This headline makes it sound like there's some terrible problem with Tesla. And it couldn't be more trivial. All it is when the lights come up to warn you about something, the font is too small. So there's an over-the-air software update to make the font bigger in the warning messages. And they make it sound like there's something wrong with the car. And he said, you shouldn't call this a recall. It's a software update. It's not like you have to drive your car in the shop and leave it there for a week to get something fixed that's important. That's pretty outrageous. Anyway,
Usually update the software over isn't it sort of automatic?
I think it is an automatic update. And yet somehow, I think because the car regulations were written before the internet, that is considered a recall. Because, of course, if there wasn't any internet and there wasn't any software, then the only way to update anything would be to make you go in the shop and replace something. And so technically it is that process, but he says this is a very unfair way to describe my cars. And he's right, of course. He's a very annoying guy, and often he's wrong, but he's right now and then. And I think he's right about this. Like Donald Trump complains everything is unfair, and sometimes it is, in fact, unfair. Anyway, so Edge is now more popular. Here's another fun article. It reminds me of an article I saw about 10 years ago where they said Linux is now the number 2 operating system because Windows, that had been 99%, had fallen to like 97%, and Linux was like 1.5%, and the Mac had fallen from like 2% down to 1%. So technically Linux was number 2. And this is similar. I mean, there was a time about 10 years ago when there was 3 browsers that were equally used, Firefox, Chrome, and Microsoft IE. But Chrome pulled way ahead. And so Chrome is still like 60 or 70%, but Edge has now risen up to 12%. So I don't know if you want to get all that excited about it, but anyway, it was something below 12 for a while, now it's up to 12. Anyway, what's what? Oh, I think they're in a small change. I think, I don't think they bother to tell you here, but there are people that have automatic reports. And if you look at the popularity of browsers, I think even Firefox is down in single digits now. I think Chrome is dominating again, which is I quit using Chrome when they started forcing me to log in and tricking me into logging in. But I know some people actually say they like the synchronizing tabs across all their devices. But I'm currently not using it, but maybe I'll get used to it someday. But I felt invaded when they tricked me into logging in the first time, and I said, I'm not using this thing anymore. I'm using Brave, which is Chrome with a little skin on it for more privacy. So it really is still Chrome. But it has a few privacy and ad blocking features, that's all. So this is actually very interesting. There was a medical treatment where they would treat some disease by implanting stuff from one human to another. Human growth hormone. They would take human growth hormone from the pituitary glands of people and then inject it into other people to cure some other problem. And it turns out that this transmitted Alzheimer's from those people to the new people, which is new, very interesting. It makes me think Alzheimer's might be like mad cow disease. Mad cow disease is from eating meat that contains these things called prions that are sort of like viruses, and they cause snarls up in your brain and cause it to deteriorate. And this, I have never heard of this before. It suggests that Alzheimer's is actually caused by a toxin. So maybe if you can somehow clean that toxin out of your food or something, it would help prevent it. That's a very interesting idea. And Alzheimer's is not contagious in the normal course of things. If you care for an Alzheimer's patient, you're not going to catch Alzheimer's from them. But apparently, if you were to eat their dead body, you would get Alzheimer's, and that's still informative. Anyway.
It's so interesting because there's also another Alzheimer's report that I think it's out of Australia, that people who eat too much meat are far more likely to get
People that eat meat are much more likely.
so much meat, like lots of meat,
Well,
processed foods.
that would make sense, yeah. I mean, that could be just general bad health from a poor diet, but it might be particularly meat. I mean, meat has these prions, some beef has this mad cow disease prion in it. And so if you could get people, go to India where a lot of people are really vegetarian, would be a thing I would do, and then compare them to people that eat meat. But anyway, it's very interesting, and if you get a mechanism, then you might be able to do prevention and cures and such. Unfortunately, the current research in Alzheimer's has been deflected for about 20 years off course by a fraudulent research project that said it was coming from the snarls in the brain. This happened also to cancer. People fake research reports, and they become really popular, and then everybody researches this technique for decades before realizing that the fundamental research is no good. It's a real shame. Anyway, so Mastodon, the thing I'm using instead of Twitter, has a critical vulnerability. People are freaking out. And they're so critical, they haven't reached the exploit code. They've just described in general, somehow when you connect to a account, it doesn't verify your origin properly. It sounds like an unprotected API call. But they say you could get in anybody's Mastodon account. And, I don't use private messages in Mastodon. I wouldn't use them in Twitter. I won't use Twitter at all. What's that?
There's no private messages in Mastodon. You can only...
There are private messages. Some people send them to me, but I don't use them willingly. Yes, I found them. They've been there all. I mean, people started sending them to me. I had to find them out. But
You have one. It's just a private message.
there are.
Private, but it's still a toot, not a... Anyway,
What is it? Yeah,
maybe it's
they do have private messages like Twitter did, but in both cases I don't trust it, and I avoid using it. If you want to send anything private, use Signal. For example, Elon Musk has been, in fact, dumping private messages out of Twitter for people that irritate him. So he has access to them, which is what I thought. And I don't trust him at all. Anyway, so there is a vulnerability. More than half the servers are already updated, though. People just need to update their server to the latest version. And this one was interesting. AI may lead to disinformation and spam, and the Indian Prime Minister's advisors say it might lead to mass schizophrenia. And I think there may be a translation issue here. I mean, I would say the current American situation, where, for example, 80% of Republicans believe that Biden did not win the election, and a very large number of them believe QAnon conspiracy theories, you could call that mass schizophrenia. I think that's not a terrible description, although it probably doesn't meet the medical definition of schizophrenia. But I think it's the same. It's a real concern that AI will make it possible to create even more convincing deepfakes, like they made deepfakes of Biden and Trump saying things they didn't really say. And so there'll be even more convincing fake news, fooling more people. Anyway, now let me stop with the news.